When you think of Africa, what comes to your mind? Be honest. For many people, the first images are poverty, conflict, and foreign aid. The world has spent decades painting Africa as a continent that only needs help, as a place of problems, not possibilities. And that, my friends, is the greatest mistake of our time, because the truth is completely different. Africa is not weak. Africa is not poor. Africa is not behind. Africa is the most underestimated power in the global economy today. Let me tell you why. Africa holds more natural wealth than any other continent on Earth. Oil, gas, gold, diamonds, cobalt, lithium. Resources that power our phones, our cars, our factories, and the future of artificial intelligence. Without Africa, the modern world cannot function. And yet, while everyone is distracted by the fight between America and China, the silent giant is rising. That giant is Africa. Think about it. By 2050, Africa will have the largest workforce in the world. Bigger than China, bigger than India. More young people, more energy, more ambition than any other place on Earth. While Europe is aging, while Japan is shrinking, while America struggles with division, Africa is growing. It is the youngest continent on the planet. Do you understand what that means? It means the future of labor, the future of markets, the future of innovation will come from Africa. And here's the challenge I put to you. Are you ready for that future? Or are you still stuck in the past, believing the old story that Africa is only about aid and charity? Because those who fail to see Africa's rise today will be the ones begging for entry into Africa's markets tomorrow. Look at history. 20 years ago, people laughed at the idea that China would one day dominate global trade. They dismissed it as cheap labor, nothing more. Today, nobody is laughing. The same mistake is being repeated with Africa right now. The world underestimates it. But one day, very soon, the world will wake up and realize Africa is not just participating in the global economy, it is driving it. And let me make it even clearer. If you are an entrepreneur, if you are an investor, if you are a student, ignoring Africa is not just a mistake, it is a disaster. Because Africa is not waiting for your permission. Africa is already building, already innovating, already rising. The only question is, will you be part of it, or will you be left behind? The world has been looking at Africa through the wrong lens for too long. They see poverty, but they don't see potential. They see weakness, but they don't see strength. And yet, when you look closely, you realize Africa holds a position in the global economy that no other continent can match. Let me start with resources. In the modern economy, resources are power. You cannot build an electric car without cobalt. You cannot build a smartphone phone without lithium. You cannot build renewable energy systems without rare earth minerals. You cannot even build the chips that run artificial intelligence without the metals that Africa holds beneath its soil. And here is the fact. Africa has the largest reserves of many of these resources in the world. The Democratic Republic of Congo alone produces over 70% of the world's cobalt. South Africa controls vast reserves of platinum and gold. Guinea has some of the world's richest bauxite mines, which are critical for aluminum. Without Africa, the so-called Green Revolution cannot exist. Without Africa, the future of AI and electric vehicles cannot exist. Do you see what this means? It means that every time you look at your phone, every time you think about the future of renewable energy, every time you imagine the AI revolution, you are already tied to Africa. You just don't realize it. And it's not only resources. Africa also holds the most valuable resource of all people. By 2050, Africa will have over 2.5 billion people, more than a quarter of the world's population. But it's not just the number that matters, it's the age. Africa is the youngest continent on the planet. The average age in Africa is under 20 years old. Compare that to Europe, where the average age is over 40. Compare that to Japan, where the population is shrinking. Even China, once the land of youth, is now aging fast because of its one-child policy. Africa is the only place where the future workforce is still growing. What does this mean? It means that while other nations worry about too many old people and not enough young workers, Africa will be bursting with energy, ideas, and ambition. Imagine hundreds of millions of young entrepreneurs, engineers, and innovators entering the global market at the same time. This is not just growth. It is an explosion waiting to happen. Now let's talk about geography. Africa is not only rich in resources and youth, it is also strategically placed. Look at the map. Africa connects the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean. It is the bridge between Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Whoever controls Africa's ports and trade routes controls the arteries of global commerce. The Suez Canal in Egypt carries 12% of global trade. East African ports are gateways to Asia. West African ports connect to Europe and the Americas. Africa is the crossroads of the future global economy. So, if Africa has resources, if it has youth, if it has geography, then the question is, why isn't it already the global leader? The answer is simple. Because for too long, others have exploited Africa instead of empowering it. Colonial powers stripped Africa of wealth. Corporations extracted resources without building industries. Politicians outside Africa used it as a pawn in their global games. And the world became comfortable thinking Africa would never rise. But here is the shift happening now. The game has changed. Africa is no longer waiting, and the world's biggest powers know it. That's why today there is a new silent competition, not in Europe, not in America, not even in Asia, but in Africa. Look at China. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, China has invested billions in African infrastructure, building railways in Kenya, ports in Djibouti, highways in Nigeria, energy projects in Ethiopia. These are not acts of charity. These are investments for influence. China knows that by building Africa's roads, it builds Africa's loyalty. By controlling trade routes, it controls the flow of goods. Look at India. Indian companies are moving into Africa with pharmaceuticals, digital services, and technology. Why? Because they know Africa is the world's next big market. They know that the same way Indian IT services changed the world, African fintech and digital platforms will soon change it too. Look at Russia. Even while struggling under sanctions, Russia is deepening military and mining partnerships with African nations. Why? Because Africa's resources are not optional, they are essential. Even the United States, which long ignored Africa, is now rushing to sign deals, build partnerships, and counter China's influence. Europe, too, is waking up. After decades of treating Africa only as a place for aid, now they see it as the battlefield of the future. Why is everyone fighting for Africa now? Because they know what most people don't. They know that Africa is the last untapped superpower, the last great frontier, the only place where the future can still be built from the ground up. Let me give you a story that proves this. In Kenya, a simple technology called M-Pesa started as a mobile money transfer system. It was born out of necessity. People had no banks, no access to financial institutions. So they used their phones to send money. That one innovation changed everything. Today, over 90% of Kenyans use mobile money, and M-Pesa has become a global model for fintech. While the West was busy building complicated banking systems, Africa leapt straight into digital finance. That is the power of leapfrogging. Africa doesn't need to copy the past. It can jump directly into the future. And it's not just Kenya. In Nigeria, young entrepreneurs are building fintech startups that are raising billions in investment. In Rwanda, drones deliver medical supplies to rural villages faster than any traditional system. In South Africa, renewable energy startups are solving power shortages with innovation. Across the continent, young people are solving problems that the rest of the world didn't even think about. This is the reality the world is ignoring. Africa is not just a place of problems. It is a laboratory of solutions. Solutions born out of necessity, out of creativity, out of resilience. And those solutions are not staying in Africa. They are spreading. They are teaching the world new ways of thinking.